Hi, I'm Jonathan Gifford. I'm here today with Mark Powell, Dr. Mark Powell, the author of The Fifth Phase, an insight-led approach to business transformation. Mark and I go back a bit because we've written 4 books together, but mainly on the theme of what business can learn from the performing arts. So we're here today to talk about data, which is Mark's patch. Mark, can you tell us some more, just briefly, about your long career in consultancy, but your recent involvement with data analytics in particular?
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, of course. I mean, by background, I am a strategy and transformation consultant. I spent 30 plus years basically working on strategy and business transformation, multi-sectors, but mainly utilities and energy sectors. And then I had a bit of an epiphany more than 10 years ago now, I think, when I ran out of things to do to actually transform organizations because everyone has sort of done it. And at the time, I was working in an organization that had a small but very good analytics practice. And I was working with a water company at the time, and they were basically saying, "Look, how do we improve performance? We've tried everything that's available. What else do we do?" And I had this idea saying, "Well, I've seen these people who do analytics. Let's explore what you could do with it." And I sat down with the board of said company, and we basically remapped them a series of analytics optimization questions. And I just had this sudden realization of, oh my God, this is the next concept in business transformation. So for the last 10 years, I've been basically exploring how do you deploy data analytics to drive business transformation, not as a tool, not as technology, but how do you fundamentally reimagine or rethink what you could do with an organization, how you could transform it and take it to the next level of performance by applying data analytics. So that's kind of where I came from. That's kind of my background.
Mm. You say some pretty harsh things in the book about the fourth phase, talking about people drowning in their own data lakes. And you have a little mantra that we've been driven by data up, that if the more data we have, the better, because it'll magically produce results, and how we need to move away from data up to value down, which is really interesting concept. So could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, data. People have been obsessed with data now for quite a few years, and this idea that there was that great quote around data is the new oil, right? All we've got to do is get it out of the ground and process a little bit, and I can make millions. The challenge with that is data is fine, but there's rather a lot of it, and obviously modern computing is enabling us to generate huge volumes of data. And there was this evolution, this idea that data intrinsically has value. I'm not convinced it does, right? And I'm not saying that some data doesn't have value, but fundamentally, unless you know what you want or can do with it that would drive outcomes, data is just a cost and expense. And there are large numbers of examples of organizations who decided that data is very, very important, and we must spend a lot of money on curating it, managing it, overseeing it, sorting out data quality. Many organizations built data warehouses and data lakes, and quite frankly, drowned in data, but never actually managed to monetize the value of it. Gartner and others have done numerous reports that have concluded that in almost all cases, 85, 90% of organizations have actually failed to get return on investment on their data investments. Why? Because there became this kind of a gross assumption that data inherently has value, and therefore it's worth investing in data for the sake of data. But it's the same thing around oil. Drilling oil out of the ground, oil is absolutely useless in its raw form unless you process it and know what I can do with it, fuel cars, help make steel, make plastic. Oil on its own is inherently unvaluable. Data is also inherently invaluable. And I think this idea came for a long time that the data just was intrinsically valuable. I used to get asked, weekly by CEOs, we're trying to work out, how to monetize our data. What do you think our data is worth? And I always give them the same answer: nothing, unless you fundamentally know what to do with it or how to turn it into outcomes that drive profitability or drive cost reduction or drive consumer enhancement. Data itself on its own has no value. But that is a concept that got lost somewhere along the line in the data sphere, as you might call it, the obsession that because we can generate data and data's everywhere. I think part of it also was the obsession with the tech companies, where if you're at Amazon, intrinsic data on customer preferences kind of theoretically does have value. But then again, they're also using the data to drive people to buy stuff they don't want on websites they shouldn't be visiting. But for most organizations, data intrinsically is not as valuable as they would like to believe. So for me, we've got to reimagine and rethink what you mean by the value of data. It's not the new oil and hasn't been for a very long time.
I really like your use of the word reimagining, because I think you make the strong point that we've been obsessed for more than 100 years now with basically efficiency, with just making our existing processes more streamlined, less waste. But the world is changing at an astonishing rate of pace, and companies need to be incredibly agile. And you seem to be saying that we can use that data may be the answer, that we can use data to reimagine our organizations, not just to make them a bit better around the edges, but to address the question of, are we doing the right thing at all? Should we be taking a radically different approach to our business? So the whole concept of reimagining business rather than just tweaking it around the edges. Tell us some more about that.
So I suppose 2 points. I mean, first, we'll just picking up on the last point around data. It's not about reimagining from data. It's reimagining from insight, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by insight? Insight is knowing something that I didn't know before, right? The value of data is fundamentally around the ability to use data to generate an insight I didn't have before that I can then act on and do something different with.
Yeah.
And to me, that leads on to reimagining. I've always been really struck by the very simple but powerful concept that Walt Disney had about Imagineering. What he always talked about was what it's about is getting people to imagine things they hadn't imagined before. In his context, imagining worlds and imagining characters that you'd not thought of before. But actually, the same concept of Imagineering is something that I think is quite powerful and largely lost in many organizations I've worked in, because they lose the ability to imagine a world where, what if you knew things you don't currently know? What would that mean? But most organizations don't like Imagineering, because Imagineering usually involves risk and cost and time. And most organizations like to do the same stuff they've always done and try to do it better because it's safe, it's comfortable, it feels familiar. But for me, reimagining is around, what if I could do things or know things that I don't currently know? And I always like this idea that if you think, and I asked the CEO this question once, and I said to him, look, if you think of your business as 100%, if you knew absolutely every single thing you could know about your supply chain, about your customers, about your employees, right? 100%. How much do you actually think you really know? And he thought about it for a couple of minutes. And he thought, on a good day, 60%, maybe, I think. I said, okay, what if you could know 65 or 70%? How much value is that? And again, he took a minute or two and he thought, that's transformational. That would double my profits if I could do it. I said, well, let's start there. Let's start imagining, if you could say, what are the 100 things or 50 things or 10 things? Does not matter. That if I knew or I could know that I don't know, what would they be and what would the value of those things be? And that's about reimagining, because we are not good at reimagining. We're used to running our organizations a bit better, a bit faster, selling a few more bits to a few more customers, developing a new product or an improvement in product, selling to the same customers, bit of marketing. But we're not very good at saying, what if? The startups are. They're good at reimagining from that level, but they always end up being non-startups and then it's back in the same cycle. But what if large organizations get better at reimagining and saying, actually, I could give you insights you don't know to problems or questions or opportunities you didn't think were possible? Why don't you start there?